Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new video. And today we are going to be looking at the 2022 gubernatorial elections. We're going to get right into it. First, just going to fill out Virginia and New Jersey as the ratings that I talked about in a separate video. Virginia, I expect Terry McAuliffe to win by around 6 to 8%. There was a poll that came out that had him up by only 4, which was a little startling for I know a lot of Democrats, especially those I saw on Twitter. But that poll was fundamentally flawed. I almost made a video about it because of how bad I thought it was. It had crazy results, like it undersampled black voters. It had black voters going to McAuliffe, like they only had him getting like 65% of the black vote when Joe Biden got like 88% of the black vote in Virginia, or maybe I think it was 81 actually. They had Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, actually winning the Hispanic vote by a point, when I think in Virginia Hispanics were like Biden plus 25 or something. So that poll was very flawed, and I'm willing to criticize it, but uh, I wouldn't believe that poll. I I like to look at the crosstabs of most polls, and there were a lot of good polls this election. First of all, polls were terrible this election cycle, but there were a lot of good polls that had better crosstabs than that we should be taking a look at later. So, taking a look at our safe Democrat states: California, Hawaii, um, New York, Rhode Island, and a lot of these kind of safe states that usually safety are not. So, kind of had to skip around for a few seconds there. Safe Republican states, we've got Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska. I thought I just it says the map is locked. Maybe I'm going crazy, but it says the map is locked. It should, okay, whatever. Oklahoma, Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, um, and yeah. Oh, and also Massachusetts, Vermont. So 17, the Republicans started out with 17 gubernatorial seats guaranteed. That's 8 away from the 25 threshold, 9 away from a direct majority. Democrats are at 11. So the Democrats have a lot of likely seats. Starting with Oregon, I almost put this in safe, but since there's no incumbent and since the Democrats kind of don't really have a front runner that's strong right now, I think that it's going to fall under 12, especially in a year where Republicans are going to be energized to come out and vote, as are Democrats. But it's better to always kind of bet along the party not in power in the midterms, and that's the Republican Party right now. New Mexico and Colorado are both states I expect to barely be likely. I think Grisham could be safe in New Mexico. I mean, she won by I think 18 or 16 in 2018, so she could easily win by more than 12. It's pretty likely that she does on second thought, but it's not super safe. It's not safe as a state like Hawaii or Rhode Island or California. So that, just to put it out there, it's kind of on the lower end of safe. Colorado, Jared Polis. This is going to be one of those occasions where Colorado votes to the right of New Mexico, even though it's not really what generally happens. Polis is a popular governor. He's not going to lose, but he's going to win by under 12. Yeah. Now, there are a couple other likely states. I think Illinois is pretty basically safe. It's in probably 11 to 12 point Pritzker win. If Adam Kinzinger does end up running for governor, which he probably is going to, because he's probably going to get drawn out of Congress anyways and would lose a primary in Congress, he would probably run and do pretty well in the Chicago suburbs, but it wouldn't be enough to offset rural downstate losses and just the huge machine the Democrats have working in their favor in Chicago. So Illinois is still pretty solid for J.B. Pritzker. Maryland, another one that's likely to go to John King, who I think is actually the former Secretary of Education under Barack Obama, pretty well-known guy in the state of Maryland. And again, this is a super Democratic state where the Democrats, I wouldn't be surprised they just came up and won it by like 20%. So this is definitely a state that is going to be very favorable to them, but not quite safe because this is being held by a Republican right now. A retiring Republican or a term limited Republican, sure, but still, I don't feel comfortable putting it in the safe category. Connecticut is another likely margin, not really because it's competitive, but because Ned Lamont only won by 3 in 2018, and that was a blue wave. So there's a small chance that Ned Lamont loses re-election. It's very, very small, but I'm not going to put it as safe, and I think he's going to win by 8 to 10% right now. Minnesota's another one, should be likely. We talk about Tim Walz running for re-election. Tim Walz, popular Democrat governor of the state, he should not have a problem winning the state of Minnesota, and I think he's going to win by a very good amount. To be completely honest, I think he's going to outrun Joe Biden because Minnesota, the Democrats, even in midterms, like in 2014 super Republican year, they still won gubernatorial elections there. They still won a Senate race there, and the Minnesota Democratic Party is very good at turning out their voters. So I don't think we're going to see a crazy shift towards to the right in Minnesota that we might see in other places. For the Republicans, they have a couple likely seats. I think that they win Alaska by a likely margin. Mike Dunleavy, not really a popular governor, but he's not unpopular enough. The last time that a Republican lost a statewide race in Alaska was to Ted Stevens in 2008. He was literally convicted of a felony, and he was legally a criminal, and he still only lost by 2 points to Mark Begich. That was also in a blue wave, an insane blue wave 13 years ago. So you can't really talk about that. So Alaska should be pretty solid for the GOP, but I'm not counting on it being more than 12%. Kansas would be our first Republican pickup. Maryland is a Democratic pickup. Kansas is a Republican pickup. Laura Kelly, she's not an unpopular governor, but she's not crazy popular either. Like, we talk about red state Democrats, we talk about Andy Beshear, John Bell Edwards, who else? Laura Kelly, Beshear and John Bell Edwards, Andy Beshear and John Bell Edwards are the best examples. Democrats in Kentucky and Louisiana, but these governors are very popular, and they enjoy popular approval ratings, and they enjoy high approval ratings from both Democrats and Republicans. Laura Kelly is not unpopular. She's popular with Democrats. She's popular with Independents. She has a decent approval with Republicans, but she's still net disapproved by Republicans by a lot. It may not be like she still runs a ton ahead of Joe Biden in terms of Republicans in her state, but she's still not making enough, or she's still not doing well enough with Republicans to be favored in 2022. Could she win? Yeah, she won in 2018 when a lot of people counted her out. But that was against a flawed opponent, Chris Kobach, who is very disliked by the electorate in a blue wave year where, the state of Kansas still voted 4 points to the right of the nation at the gubernatorial level in 2022. If we see a narrow environment like D+1 or D+2, Kelly is still on track to lose. And the only way that she wins is if Chris Kobach runs again, which I don't think is going to happen, and the Republicans would be crazy to nominate him again because he has a history of losing statewide races. So Kansas, likely a state that's going to flip against to the Republicans. Plus, they have a good candidate, Jeff Collier, who I think is going to beat Kelly. He lost the primary to Kobach in 2018. Probably going to beat Laura Kelly in 2022. Now, a couple more likely Republican states. We've got Iowa, we've got Ohio. These states I like to generally characterize together. They usually vote similar. They voted within a point of each other in 2020 and 2018. These were both narrow Republican wins. In 2022, they're going to be a bit less close, I think. Iowa's safer for the GOP than Ohio because the Democrats, they're talking about Abby Finken now potentially running for Senate or governor. She's a decent candidate, but other than that, they don't really have anyone to run. Of course, we can float names. We can talk about Rob Sand, the auditor, Steve King, or not Steve King. Excuse me. Cindy Acton. I don't know. Steve King is a former Republican, congressman for the state. I don't know why I said that. So Iowa, the Democrats are going to run someone decent, but it's not going to be enough to win the state. Especially in an environment where Joe Biden was not a bad candidate for Iowa, but he still lost there by 7 or 8 points. Now that was against Donald Trump, who had great rural turnout, and the Republicans are not going to get that in 2022. But the Democrats are not going to have the advantage of being able to campaign against Trump in a state like Iowa. They're going to, but they're not going to do it as well as they did in 2020 because Trump's not on the ballot. Now, I'm not saying that people aren't going to come out and vote. They're going to come out and vote, and there are going to be a lot of first-time midterm voters, maybe second-time midterm voters who are inspired because they didn't like Trump in 2018 are going to come out in 2022. But in Iowa, it's not really going to be a huge impact. In a Republican-leaning state, the Democrats have not won really big elections in for quite some time. They're probably not going to. There's no reason to expect it to flip in 2022. For Ohio, we talk about Mike DeWine being the incumbent, probably getting primaried. He's probably going to win his primary. It's going to be close, but he's probably going to win his primary and then win the election. The only way that I see this state flipping is if DeWine loses his primary and runs as an independent or something, because he is a fairly moderate Republican, and there are some voices on the right wing of his party that don't like him, but he shouldn't really be a problem in a state like Ohio, and he can do better than Trump in the Cleveland and Columbus suburbs, even if he does worse in the rural areas. So in a Trump-less 7 or 8 state, in a likely Republican state, I don't think DeWine's going to lose re-election. I just really don't see it. Uh, South Carolina is another one where the Republican Party is expected to win here, but it's not going to be by as much as they would have, maybe a decade ago, because the state's shifting to the left. The black voters in the state are shifting to the left. The suburban voters are shifting to the left, and the urban areas are shifting to the left. The rurals are still super red, and they're going to stay red for a very, very long time, which is why the state's staying red. But it's not, the R plus 20 state. In 2004, Bush won it by like 20. Now it's basically, the margin's been basically cut in half, and I think that Henry McMaster, the incumbent Republican, is going to win by 10. He won by 8 in 2018, so he's going to win by a little more this time around because he's the incumbent, and because 2018 was a blue wave year, 2022 is probably not going to be a blue wave year. So, yeah, but South Carolina still is a state that the Republicans are going to win by a reduced margin. Joe Cunningham's probably going to be the Democratic nominee. He, is not a bad candidate. He's a good candidate. He won a congressional seat in 2018 that Trump won by 13, lost in 2020. Still a good candidate, but going to lose, and I don't know why he's running for governor, to be quite frank. I think he's doing, my opinion, I think he's doing it to shift the state to the left in the future, but as of right now, he's not going to win this election. I would not be surprised if he lost by more than 12%. Florida, I think, is on the border between being likely and they don't actually put it as lean, so just characterize that right now. You already know it's going to happen. DeSantis is probably going to win by 4 or 5. It really depends on who the Democrats run. If they run Charlie Crist, I think DeSantis wins by 3. If they run someone like Nikki Fried, I think DeSantis could win by up to 7. Because, and first of all, there's a lot of hype about Ron DeSantis, especially on the Republican side. I know I've hyped up Ron DeSantis a lot, but you're going to, like, if you go on Twitter, I can open up my phone right now, open Twitter, and if I look up, like, some Republican, conservative leaning election Twitter account that I follow, I will literally find a map of Florida. County map of Florida has Ron DeSantis winning by 12%. He's not going by a safe margin. He's very popular within his party, but Florida is still a competitive state, and we can't just act like he's running in Kansas, or I guess I can't say that here, he's running in Nebraska, because he's not. He's running in a state that Donald Trump only won by 3, and he doesn't even have some of the appeal that Trump had. He's not going to do as well with rural voters. He's not going to do as well, potentially, with Hispanics. Now, that being said, he's still going to win. He's going to make inroads with Democratic voters. He's going to make inroads with suburban voters, and he's going to probably win by more than Trump, but he's not going to win by 12%. So, that being said, we should move on to Texas. Likely Republican state, Greg Abbott, he won by, I think 16 in 2018. He's probably going to win by a similar margin again, maybe a little bit less because the state's leftward trend. But he has shown the ability to appeal to Democrats who may not have voted for Trump in 2016 or 2020. I mean, he ran, I think, 7 points ahead of Trump in 2016. If he runs 7 points ahead of Trump in 2020, he's probably going to win by, I think 12 or 13, which is basically the margin I expect him to win by. So not as safe for the GOP as a state like Alaska, but still pretty safe. Or sorry, safe in a state like Alaska, almost safe. I don't know why I got that mixed up. Whoops. Now, these are the states that are going to be battlegrounds, okay? So, first of all, I think that Nevada is a lean D state. Whoops. I don't know why I keep moving. It says I locked it. It says I locked it. Okay, whatever. I think Nevada is a lean D at this point in time. This is mostly because, Steve Sisolak might not be a popular incumbent for Nevada, but he's still not favored to lose because the Republicans haven't found anyone to run. Right now, their front runner is John Lee, the former mayor of North Las Vegas, who had a really bad scandal, I think, in 2017. And I'm not going to talk about it because I don't think it'll be appropriate for this channel. If you would like to do your own research, you can. But right now, when your only candidate is a scandalous guy who was a Democrat a couple of months ago, not going to bode well for you. And I think that, we could see Nevada being a huge disappointment for Republicans in 2022 because, even if the Nevada Democratic Party's leadership has gone down the drain, they're not feeling good candidates for the Senate race. Catherine Cortez Masto is probably going to win the Senate race, and their gubernatorial candidate is a scandal-plagued, really disliked person, John Lee, the mayor of North Las Vegas, I believe. Now, going over to the state of Michigan, I think Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer probably wins by 5, maybe a little less. I would have said it was likely until James Craig declared his candidacy. James Craig, being the police chief of Detroit, he has the ability to appeal to suburban suburban moderate Democrats even, and black voters in Detroit. Because, we talk about black voters in being Democratic voters. Black voters are not socially, they're not and again, I'm not going to refer to them as one group because each and every black voter is a different voter, but black voters are not always socially liberal. They may vote for Democrats. 9 out of every 10 black voters are Democrats, but they may not be as socially liberal um as the party suggests. So for example, I read a poll in the state of, I think, California that showed that white voters had a more favorable view of defund the police than black voters. And again, very anecdotal, but I've seen interviews with black voters where they say, I'm in favor of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think we need police reform, but we should not be burning down buildings. And that is a key part of why Democrats performed so poorly with Hispanics in 2020 and why they need to address the whole BLM is Antifa, right? Because Black Lives Matter is a popular statement nationwide, no matter where you go, but it gets very unpopular in a lot of places when people associate it with violence. So I think James Craig, being a moderate Republican in Michigan, Craig said early, he said in an interview that he supported the verdict on the Derek Chauvin trial, where Chauvin was charged on all 3 counts of murder for the killing of George Floyd, but he didn't support the riots that took place in his city of Detroit. So I think he can appeal to a lot of more socially moderate black voters. He's not going to win the black vote, but he's going to appeal to socially moderate black voters, and he can really do well in urban areas compared to what other Republicans have done. That being said, Whitmer has significant crossover white working class appeal and is a really strong candidate for large cities and suburbs. So these are 2 very good candidates for both parties, but Michigan, I think Whitmer's going to win by a little more than Joe Biden, with her being the incumbent. Georgia is a state that I expect to be close to likely, and I know this is kind of a big statement here, I guess, but I think that Stacey Abrams is probably going to win this race by 4 to 5 points, especially if Brian Kemp wins his primary. If he does, maybe it's tilt, but Kemp is an incumbent that is really disliked by a lot of people. He's disliked by moderates, he's disliked by Democrats, obviously, and he's disliked by Republicans because, in their eyes, he's a rhino. When in fact, Kemp is among the most conservative governors in America, but for whatever reason, a lot of people on the conservative side of the equation have been really mad at Brian Kemp for not overturning the election results in the state of Georgia. He didn't really have the power to do that anyways, but for whatever reason, people are mad at him. And that's going to cost him. He might lose the primary, by the way. He might lose the primary. A year ago, he was viewed as, a huge a huge star for the GOP. Now his career is over. He cannot run for office federally because he'd get destroyed in a Republican primary. In Georgia, he might narrowly hold on, but his party is just too divided about him for him to really win re-election in Georgia, and I think that Georgia shifting to the left probably going to be a Democratic pickup in 2022. So going over to I know we have 2 more, New Hampshire and Maine. These are 2 northeastern states that I expect to, be close to likely, especially Maine. I think Maine is you can say likely if you want, but I'll have it as lean. Paul LePage running in Maine against Janet Mills. This could be an interesting race, especially LePage being the former governor, and Mills not being crazy popular, but still Maine is a Democratic-leaning state. I know Susan Collins won in 2020, but it's still a state that Democrats are expected to win. And in 2022, it narrows up a little bit, but shouldn't flip. New Hampshire is probably a Democratic pickup. I think Chris Sununu does run for Senate. I do think that Chris Sununu is going to win the Senate race, by the way. But, we're going to see kind of the opposite of 2020, where we saw a Democrat win the Senate race, but a Republican win the gubernatorial election. I think it's going to be the Republican wins the Senate race, Democrats win the governor race. And Joyce Craig, the mayor of Manchester, New Hampshire, is expected to run for the Democrats, and I think she's going to win this race. I mean, her being the mayor of the largest city certainly helps her. New Hampshire, we don't see the urban-rural divide we see in other states. New Hampshire is a fairly moderate state, fairly libertarian state, where rural voters and urban voters are not too different. They voted Republican before, and they voted Democratic before. And I think that Craig has that appeal to both groups, and I think she can win this gubernatorial election. So we're not coming down to our tilt states. I think, how do we do this as dramatic as possible? So let's tie it. Let's give Pennsylvania to the Democrats. I think that Pennsylvania goes to the Democratic Party. I think that Josh Shapiro is a very good candidate. He won by 5 in 2020, meaning he outran Joe Biden by around 4%, a little less than that. And he's probably going to win the gubernatorial, or he's probably going to run for the gubernatorial election. He's probably going to win the primary. and then beat Lou Barletta. But Barletta's a pretty bad candidate for the GOP. He lost the 2018 Senate race by, I think, 12 points or something. Uh, I know there was a blue wave, but Pennsylvania still did vote 3 points to the left of the country, 4 points to the left of the country. If that happens again, it's likely Democrat, maybe lean Democrat. Putting his tilt just to be cautious because I made a mistake in Pennsylvania. I said Biden was going to win it by like 3 points more than he won it by, so I'm just going to put his tilt to be cautious. But I do think the Democrats are favored in this race. Now, Arizona, I'll give this one to the GOP. I think that Arizona is going to narrowly go for Kimberly Yee. I made a video talking about it. You should watch it. I think I do a better job of outlining it because I have to condense this video. This video can't be an hour long as much as I'd want it to be. But Kimberly Yee is a good candidate for the GOP. I believe she is the state treasurer, and she'd probably be running against Katie Hobbs, who is the Secretary of State of Arizona. And Kimberly Yee has appealed to both moderates in the Maricopa suburbs and Trump supporters, which she did in 2018. She survived the blue wave. She won by, I think, nearly 9%, so still an exceptional candidate. She's going to win by less because I think she's still going to alienate some voters on both, whether that be Trump supporters or moderates, because she is a pro-Trump Republican. She's no anti-Trumper. So she's still going to alienate a few moderates that voted for her in 2018. But she's still likely to win this race because she has that appeal that other Republicans didn't have. Trump didn't have it. Martha McSally didn't have it, and I don't think that some Republicans in Congress, like for example, Paul Gosar, have it. So I think he is a unique Republican that can still win in Arizona. With that, she doesn't really pander to the moderates or Trump supporters. She has that crossover appeal, right? Not really crossover appeal. She just has appeal to all of the party, which is going to help her narrowly hold the seat with the GOP, defeating Katie Hobbs. So the last seat, the closest seat, if I could, I'd leave this as a toss-up, but I know you guys hate when I do that, so I'm going to give it to the Republicans, with this being a red wave. Tony Evers is a popular governor, don't get me wrong. He's not unpopular, he's not scandal-plagued, and he's not really a governor who is getting a ton of attention right now. That being said, Wisconsin's a state that Joe Biden won by just 22,000 votes in an environment that even just sees a 1-point swing to the right compared to 2020. It's likely that it flips, and I'll tell you why. First of all, Wisconsin is the geography for Democrats in Wisconsin is not great because fun fact actually, Joe Biden got more votes in Trump counties than he did in counties that he won, meaning that the Biden votes or in the Democratic voters are very kind of spread out across the state. So that makes for a very interesting environment in that Tony Evers has to pander to basically every group. He has to pander to the Milwaukee suburbs, the Milwaukee exurbs, the Madison suburbs, and the rural areas that maybe there are some northern rural areas of Wisconsin that are still kind of blue, and he has to do that all while not turning off the white working class that came out for Trump in 2020. Evers is probably going to do worse than Joe Biden in the wild counties, which are basically moderate Republican counties in the Milwaukee exurbs. But he's going to do a little better with working class voters and a little better with rural voters. I think that's a recipe for a very, very narrow race in Wisconsin. And I do think that Evers, don't get me wrong, he could absolutely win. But as of right now, I do not think he's going to win re-election because the national environment is likely to be a little more skewed to the GOP than it was in 2020, and because Wisconsin's trend has a slight trend to the right. So again, this is my gubernatorial prediction as of June 15th, 2021. We're halfway through 2021. This is insane. We're halfway through 2021. Like where did 2021 go? This is crazy. But that's it for this video, guys. I'm talking so much that my words are becoming a little slurred. But that's it. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.